Really, the most important architectural period in St. Genevieve's history is that very early French colonial period. And the date of the original town of St. Genevieve is sometime in the late 1740s. And the style of architecture that the French used here is a vertical log kind of construction. And it's really rare in the United States today.
The uniqueness lies in the fact that the French decided to build their homes with the vertical logs upright rather than horizontally like the American frontiersmen.
St. Genevieve is very fortunate in that we have quite a few buildings that remain from that colonial period in that certain architectural style. And the vertical log buildings are divided into kind of two categories. One is called Pateaux en terre. The house that we're sitting at right now is the Beauvais Amaro house built in that style. So the vertical logs of the walls go directly into the earth. There's no foundation. It's an extraordinarily rare style of architecture from that time period in the early 1700s up to the early part of the 1800s that the French used.
House is Pateaux sur sol, which is logs, vertical logs that have been mortised into massive sills that rest on a limestone foundation. The property is owned by the National Society of Colonial Dames, and when they purchased that to restore it for all the world to learn from, Dr. Alan Conley was the architectural historian that led the restoration. And it is known as the first completely restored French Creole house in the nation, and it's won the respect of historians and architects worldwide. It truly is, you know, there's no place like that.
Well, this is the Green Tree Tavern, and the Green Tree Tavern was built about 1790. That's probably the year, give or take a month or two. It is a vertical log post-on-sill structure, which means there's a limestone foundation, there's a sill that sits on that, and then the vertical logs are mortise and tenon into that sill. One of the most interesting parts of this house is actually the size of it. We never found any evidence that was expanded upon, except the end quarter was added later on. The gallery was taken off. But if you go up into the attic, you will find a Norman, instead of a Norman truss system, which was typical back in the French colonial days, you'll find an English truss system, which are smaller posts. They're actually willow, and they're smaller, mortise and tenon in, same as the Norman truss. But the Norman truss are huge logs, and these were actually posts that were mortise and tenon in. Now, in between the vertical logs is actually what's called bousillage. Bousillage was a mixture of, this building was a mixture of wheat straw and topsoil, which had a sand in it, which actually turned more into a brick than anything. And what you're looking at here is the original vertical logs. These vertical logs were hewn and made in 1790 and then turned around. So they were here when George Washington was in office.
Those buildings are really the two major styles that were used by the French here during the time period that we call colonial time period for St. Genevieve, under the French and then the Spanish regimes.
St. Genevieve has some of the most historically famous architecture in America, and people from all over come to see these amazing buildings.